Hi, and welcome to episode 5 of Leave a Spook. So today we have a lovely treat of 4 spooky stories. These are all submitted from our friend in New Zealand, Your White Knight. We've added a little gimmick to just add more flair to the storytelling. I have my sister-in-law and my husband, and they are going to draw the creatures or the persons involved in the story. It might be just amusing. Should we vote on who has the...
No.
Okay. If you would like to join us and draw along, just take a little pen and paper and let's see if you drew a similar figure to either one of them. Story number 1, The House of Dread. It was a dark, rainy evening when I took a call from a family in distress. They weren't calling for an ordinary emergency. This was something far stranger. The family was convinced that their house was haunted and their terror had reached a breaking point. As they described it to me, the paranormal activity had grown increasingly sinister. Faint cries of babies echoed from empty rooms, doors creaked open and slammed shut on their own, and worst of all, an overwhelming sense of dread seemed to seep down from the ceiling of the living room. I could hear the fear in their voices. They explained that this had been happening for weeks, but tonight was the worst yet. They felt they had to leave. I dispatched a unit, but unfortunately they were diverted to a higher priority event. The family was left to rely on a relative to collect them until a kamatua, a Maori elder, could come to bless the home. Kamatua. Most cases, we attribute such reports to stress or mental health issues. But in this case, both the husband and wife corroborated the chilling details. Their voices filled with genuine, palpable fear. And that, again, is The House of Dread. That was a good story.
That was.
Very well written. 3, 2, 1. Oh, I love your people. Bam.
The door slam.
Is this the outside of the window? Or like the inside?
That's the inside with the curtains.
Okay, so if I was
Or
looking...
the phone ringing.
So I was looking out the window. Now let's move on to story 2, which is Red Light in the Wilderness. 2 women set out on a rugged 7-hour hike, reaching a solitary hut on a remote mountaintop. It was cold, windy, with the isolation of the wilderness pressing in around them. At around 11 p.m., they were startled awake by a blinding red light piercing through the darkness. As their eyes adjusted, they realized it was a red lens torch, held by a figure standing silently in the open doorway. Oof. He was completely still, his shape barely discernible in the darkness. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there, watching. They called out to him in terror, asking him who he was and what he wanted before he just silently turned around and left without a word. Terrified, they called the police from the hut, which, despite its remote location, somehow still had cell service, but they were far from help. I asked if they could lock the doors, but there were no locks. Only 2 glass-pane doors separating them from the stranger. I urged them to barricade the doors, but with limited supplies, they could only press their bodies against them and wait. All night, I called back to check on them, knowing that there was nothing more we could do until morning. When dawn finally broke, they hiked down in a state of near panic, frequently looking over their shoulders. The unsettling part? The man's use of a red lens torch suggests he was preserving his night vision, indicating he had been lurking unseen in the darkness. That was a great story. 3, 2, 1. Bam. Wow.
That's what you say to a kid.
He has like red vision coming out of his eyeballs. Whoa, I love these women. These look like 2 abuelas. I really like this one.
That one's really nice.
Wow. 2 more stories. Story 3, The Knock at the Farmhouse. Deep in the countryside, far from any police presence, a woman woke to loud banging at her front door. Groggy from sleep and confused, the woman got up to check outside. The darkness was absolute, the kind you only find in the rural night. There was was no one that she could see in the inky blackness of the countryside. Nervous and unable to shake the unease, she decided to distract herself by checking her Facebook. As she sat at her computer with her back to the door, a deafening crash suddenly erupted behind her. The cat door had been forcefully kicked in. The small flap flew across the room and landed in her feet. With a mix of horror and irrational bravery, she sprang out the door and kicked her foot back through the opening. Her foot connected with something, but she couldn't see anything. Presumably, whomever or whatever had kicked in her cat door was right outside the door. Terrified, she tried, despite evidence to the contrary. She tried to convince herself it was all in her head. But then a quiet knocking started again, steadily growing louder, louder. The knocking turned to pounding, and suddenly the glass around the cat door shattered, shattering shards across the floor. Through the now open frame, she saw nothing but a pair of legs, silent and unmoving. The figure stood there for what felt like an eternity before simply leaving. It took her 45 minutes before she could summon the courage to call us. By the time officers arrived, whatever or whoever had been there was gone. Ready? In 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's see. The knock at the farmhouse. Let's see. Drew an actual cat. She's at the top like Rapunzel or something, waiting to be saved. How long do you think these legs were? They just said they were through the cat door. Whoa, a pig and a cow. I knew it. I knew he drew an F. I knew it. This is good too. It's like a series of events. This is when she first checks, and these are the glass shards,
Yeah.
right? Excellent. Oh, it's like through the door, like it's hailing a cab. Guys, comment, like, subscribe. All right. The very last one is one missed call. A concerned neighbor called about an elderly man who hadn't been seen in days. While a unit was dispatched, a colleague of mine decided to try calling him. The phone rang, then connected, and a frail, distant voice answered. The man confirmed his name, but then the call abruptly cut out. Repeated attempts to call him back were met with unanswered rings. When the officers arrived at the residence, they found the doors locked and windows covered in flies. A grim sign. Upon entering, they discovered the man had been dead for some time, the state of his body indicating he passed away before the call. Yet the recording confirmed that it wasn't an answering machine or automated message. The old man's voice had somehow answered despite the impossible timeline. So he called the police station post-mortem. Were there signs of a struggle at all? Because the abrupt cutting off makes it sound as though maybe someone was impersonating him, trying to establish a timeline. And then the cutoff was actually the old man alive. And then the person who killed him went to finish him off. That's super eerie. All right, let's see which one looks more like one missed call, guys, even though it's not a competition. Whoa. Oh, that's a pool of blood. Wow, he died screaming. I like the classic phone, rotary phone. That's a police officer.
Yeah.
Very patriotic. He has like sirens on his uniform. Oh, what is
That's
this?
what the story's gonna be like.
Okay, flies, puddle of blood, and then that's him presumably calling. His face looks like Marilyn Manson.
Okay.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let us know what your favorite story was, if you've experienced anything similar. I don't mean to just choose favorites, but the red light in the wilderness really resonated with me. I like stories where you're like out in nature, you kind of just have to fend for yourself, and you're just counting down the minutes until the sun comes up again. So that was really cool. Okay, thank you so much once again, your White Knight, for these incredible stories. Short, scary, and to the point. If you enjoyed Leave a Spook, please let us know in the comments. Also, message me or find me on TikTok or Instagram at Leave a Scar, 2 R's for Instagram, 1 R for TikTok, and send me your scary stories, scary encounters, real, fictional. We don't need to know. We just need to hear your story. All right, thank you so much, you two, for joining me today, you mysterious friends.
Thank you for having us.
Anytime. Oh,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Spooky, scary, scary. Spooky.